you need to manage systematic failures. Now, systematic failures in terms of the standard are defined as failures coming from a direct cause, which can only be eliminated by changing the design, changing the procedure, changing the manufacturing process, changing the operational procedures. Okay? So it is a statistical methods fail. The stupid example is Windows. We all hate Windows. Okay? The earlier versions of Windows 3 and 3.1, if you type a certain key sequence, you get a blue screen. If you got another PC with the same version of Windows, you type the same sequence of keys, you get a blue screen. So it was repeatable. It's a software bug. That's a systematic failure. Other examples of systematic failures, NASA sent a probe that were going to do orbiting of Mars. So they launched it, they sent it out, and they did orbit insertion. It's going to start orbiting Mars. So it's arriving at high velocity, they turn the spacecraft around and they decelerate it to the right velocity, and it then starts orbiting insertion. Anyway, this probe arrived at Mars, did its orbital insertion maneuver, and went straight into Mars at high speed. All they found was bits that they took. Eventually got a satellite in place to take pictures. And they started root cause analysis. They said, okay, what went wrong? And it took them about 3 hours to find the problem. The navigation people were using imperial units, feet, miles per second, whereas the propulsion guys were using metric, meters per second, kilometers. Now the computer has no idea, it just sees a number. So it was just getting a number and doing whatever it's told to do. So this had no chance. Now it had been picked up during testing and reported, but they launched, they didn't change the software. That's another example of a systematic failure. The thing about systematic failures is you cannot predict the failure, you cannot, statistical methods don't work. It's either fail or it hasn't. Okay? It's like binaries, on or off. You need functional safety management to manage this. You can reduce it. You can't eliminate it fully. You can reduce it to an acceptable level by functional safety management. And on top of it, you need a good safety culture. People need to be aware of safety and they need to take it seriously. And you get good safety culture and you get bad safety culture. It's dependent on what's happening from management, what management is pushing down. Okay? Functional safety management boils down to the 3 Ps. People, procedures, paperwork. That's what it's about. So you apply the same redundancy as you would to equipment to ensure that these problems, these systematic errors, are rarely created, easily identified, and when identified, promptly corrected. The people, procedures, and paperwork, a system, a workflow, a management system that works properly, quickly does this, easily does this. The 3 Ps, keep it in mind: people, procedures, and paperwork. Okay, the objective is to leverage existing quality management systems. You don't have to create a new one. You will find that you're following a lot of the steps required. You're already doing it. You just now have to add stuff in. There may be some gap that you've got to identify and close. So you've got to leverage your existing quality management system. Okay. You need to specify management and technical activities throughout the entire safety life cycle, okay, which will then be used to achieve and maintain the functional safety. You need to specify responsibilities of people, departments, and organizations. You need to be very clear about who's doing what. Okay? So the key way to do this is you need to have a champion, someone in charge of this. Okay? Maybe a department. You've got a big organization. risk. So you need to have a champion. You need to extend your existing monitored quality system. You need to develop related functional safety related procedures. So you need to find out what procedures you need to develop. So perhaps you need to do a gap analysis on your existing system. And the best way to do a gap analysis is to get someone independently to come and do that. Just find out where your gaps are and come with a list. Perhaps create a roadmap where you need. It's going to take you 6 months to first do this to get there. And then you need to plan, execute, improve, audit. You need to do continuous functional safety audits. Because engineers, and I think managers will understand this, engineers are always trying to find shortcuts. You want us to do this, there's a workaround. You've given us a network login, but there's a generic login. Engineers are always trying to find shortcuts. So you need to make sure that your workflow is not drifting away, that your system is not being compromised through regular audits. And you'll find that if they start to understand why they've got functional safety management in place, these audits will come back with clean findings, no significant findings at all. It's about the culture. Company safety culture. Now, if you go to the States, and I'll focus on the States, if you go to a town that has a Dow facility, Dow Chemicals, they're very good at safety. So much so that if you go on a weekend, you go drive through the neighborhoods, and you'll see the people doing their gardens, cutting their lawns, trimming hedges during summer. You'll find that the people who work for Dow Chemicals have got safety boots on, they've got shin pads, they've got gloves, they've got safety goggles on. They've brought what they've learned at work, they've taken it home, they take it seriously. Whereas other facilities are wearing their slops, shorts, no eye guards, cutting down using dangerous equipment. So it's a company safety culture. It's got to permeate to the point where they take it home. You need to create a plan, a functional safety management plan. When are you going to do what? Who's going to do it? And this applies to your operational phase as well, relating to proof tests, to maintenance, to all this sort of thing. You need to have a plan, and you need to stick to it. The roles and responsibilities clearly defined. As people move on, as people get promoted, this plan, these roles and responsibilities need to be continuously updated. You need to record personnel competency. It's not the individual's responsibility anymore. It's now the company's responsibility. You need to have documentation and documentation control in place. There was an incident caused in the Far East, there was an accident. Luckily, no fatalities. Someone was injured. They were using a document management system. Someone said there's version 6, I want you to review it. He went in and he reviewed version 6, but they forgot to synchronize. He was reviewing an old version 6. It didn't pick up an error in the specification in the new version 6, which was then used for the design. Okay, so this documentation and documentation control needs to be efficient and error-free. In this modern day, with the SharePoint and document management systems, the electronic systems, this needs to be very carefully monitored. In fact, if you look at the standard, 61508, part 6, I think it's Annex D, the last paragraph, does sometimes, if you read it carefully, it does imply that these management systems, these ERS, need to be designed according to the standard. Okay. But you need to have something in place that you trust for this documentation and documentation control. You need to have functional safety verifications. Who's going to check your work? You can't have the same design team checking their work. You've got to have someone independent checking your work. You call it a peer review. Squad check on your P&IDs. That's the same thing, but you need to formalize it in terms of your plan, in terms of your management procedures. And then you need to do regular assessments, audits and assessment, functional safety assessment. You need to get someone independent of the team, maybe independent of the company, to come in and see that you're following your process. You said you're going to do this, are you doing it? And then you need to have documented processes and procedures. You can't rely on people saying, okay, you've got to do it like this, and then you do that. It's got to be somewhere, you've got to be able to find a document